I stood in my backyard watching Zeus, my 120-pound Rottweiler, gently play with my daughter Mia's soccer ball, when I noticed HOA President Gerald Hammond photographing my dog over the fence like he was documenting a crime scene. His telephoto lens clicked repeatedly, the sound carrying across the morning air like an accusation. What Gerald didn't know was that I'm Chris Reynolds, CEO of Pinnacle Property Insurance, the company that underwrites his precious HOA's liability coverage. His crusade against my dog breed was about to cost him everything. The notice appeared on my door 3 days later. Bright orange paper that practically screamed violation, demanding immediate removal of my dangerous breed dog within 14 days or face fines, legal action, and possible foreclosure. The language was hysterical, claiming Rottweilers posed unacceptable liability risks to community safety and property values. I had to laugh. In my 18 years running insurance operations, I'd reviewed thousands of dog bite claims, and breed had almost nothing to do with actual risk factors. Let me back up and explain how I ended up in this suburban nightmare. My name is Chris Reynolds, and 6 years ago I was living the corporate dream if your version involves 80-hour weeks, constant travel, and watching your family life dissolve like sugar in hot coffee. I'd climbed from entry-level claims adjuster to CEO of a mid-sized insurance company through sheer determination and an encyclopedic knowledge of risk assessment that made actuaries weep with joy. My marriage to Michelle, a software engineer who actually understood my obsession with statistical modeling, produced one perfect daughter, Mia, who inherited her father's logical mind and my stubborn refusal to accept injustice. We lived in a sterile downtown condo where the biggest excitement was elevator maintenance announcements and the occasional fire drill that disrupted conference calls. Everything changed when Michelle's company offered her a remote position and Mia started asking why we didn't have a yard like her friends. The pandemic had taught us that life's too short to spend in concrete boxes, so we bought a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in Riverside Heights. Tree-lined streets, good schools, and enough space for Mia to actually run around without bumping into furniture every 3 steps. Zeus came into our lives through pure serendipity. Mia volunteered at the animal shelter for a school project and fell completely in love with this massive Rottweiler who'd been surrendered when his elderly owner passed away. The dog was 8 years old, perfectly trained, and had the gentlest temperament I'd ever seen in any breed. He'd been at the shelter for 4 months because everyone wanted puppies, not senior dogs who deserved peaceful retirement. I did my research thoroughly because that's what insurance executives do. Contacted veterinary behaviorists, reviewed bite statistics, studied breed characteristics, and learned that Rottweilers rank behind golden retrievers in temperament testing. The dangerous breed narrative was media hysteria, not actuarial reality. We brought Zeus home on a Saturday morning, and he immediately became Mia's devoted guardian and our family's 4-legged therapist. The HOA bylaws mentioned nothing about breed restrictions when we purchased. I'd reviewed every page of that covenant document with the attention I normally reserved for multi-million-dollar policy contracts. The pet policy allowed 2 dogs under certain weight limits, required leash compliance, and mandated cleanup of waste. Zeus met every requirement. We'd even installed a privacy fence that exceeded community standards, spending $8,000 on beautiful cedar construction that made our backyard look like a suburban paradise. That's when I met Gerald Hammond, a retired insurance adjuster who apparently missed the power trip of denying claims and found new purpose micromanaging neighborhood pets. Gerald had been HOA president for 4 years, ever since moving here from some gated community where being a former insurance professional apparently qualified him to terrorize pet owners. His silver Lexus with vanity plates reading CLAIMS1 prowled the streets like a predator hunting violations. The irony of a former adjuster trying to intimidate an insurance CEO wasn't lost on me, but I kept my professional identity private. After years of corporate politics, I'd learned that anonymity in your personal life was precious. Our neighbors knew me as Chris, Mia's father who worked from home and baked excellent brownies for school fundraisers. Gerald's first move was calling animal control, claiming Zeus had displayed aggressive behavior toward children. The officer who responded, a patient woman named Officer Santos, spent 20 minutes watching Zeus gently retrieve Mia's frisbee and accept belly rubs from neighborhood kids who'd gathered to defend him. "Mrs. Reynolds, I don't see any aggression here," Officer Santos said, scratching Zeus behind his ears while he groaned with pleasure. "Whoever called this in either confused your dog with another animal or filed a false report. I'll note that in my documentation." But Gerald wasn't deterred by facts or reality. He convened an emergency board meeting to address the dangerous dog situation, sending formal notices to all residents about the urgent safety threat. The language was deliberately inflammatory, designed to terrify parents into supporting his crusade. I recognized the tactic from my insurance days, creating panic to justify predetermined decisions. The community center smelled like stale coffee and fear when I arrived that Thursday evening. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everyone in that unflattering glow that makes reasonable people look like extras in a zombie movie. About 30 residents had shown up, many clutching Gerald's fear-mongering flyers like they were evacuation orders. Michelle stayed home with Mia, who was devastated by the attacks on her beloved dog. Zeus lay beside her on the couch, somehow understanding that his gentle girl needed extra comfort. That image of my daughter crying into her dog's fur made my blood boil with protective fury. Gerald sat at the head table flanked by his board cronies, Vice President Martha Simmons, who treated HOA rules like biblical commandments, and Treasurer Frank Delgado, whose main qualification seemed to be agreeing with everything Gerald said. They'd prepared a PowerPoint presentation that would have been laughable if it wasn't so malicious. "Ladies and gentlemen," Gerald began, clicking his remote with theatrical gravity, "we face a serious liability exposure that threatens every family in this community. Dangerous breed dogs like Rottweilers, pit bulls, and German shepherds create unacceptable insurance risks that could bankrupt our HOA if an incident occurs." The first slide showed gruesome dog bite photos clearly pulled from internet searches, none involving Rottweilers specifically, but designed to trigger emotional responses rather than rational thinking. I'd seen this manipulation tactic in bad faith insurance cases, using fear to override logic. Insurance companies are increasingly refusing coverage for communities that allow these breeds, Gerald continued, his voice dripping with false authority. We could lose our liability protection entirely, leaving every homeowner personally exposed to devastating lawsuits. I raised my hand calmly, channeling 18 years of boardroom experience into suburban HOA theater. "Mr. Hammond, could you provide documentation of insurance companies actually denying coverage based on specific dog breeds in HOA communities?" His face flushed slightly, clearly unused to being challenged with actual questions. "It's common industry practice," he sputtered. "Any insurance professional knows this. I'm curious about your source," I pressed, pulling out my phone to take notes. "Which carriers specifically have denied coverage to HOAs based solely on resident dog breeds?" The silence stretched uncomfortably. Martha jumped in to rescue him. "Mrs. Reynolds, we're not here to debate insurance technicalities. We're here to protect children from dangerous animals. My dog has never shown aggression to anyone," I said evenly. "Animal control investigated and found zero evidence of dangerous behavior. What specific incident justifies this emergency action?" Gerald's composure cracked like thin ice. "Your dog's breed has a documented history of attacks. The statistics are clear." "Actually, they're not," I replied, opening my phone to pull up research I'd compiled. The American Veterinary Medical Association found that breed is a poor predictor of dog aggression. Factors like socialization, training, and owner responsibility matter far more than genetics. And insurance actuarial data supports this conclusion. I could see I'd struck a nerve. Gerald's face cycled through emotions like a mood ring in a blender. He clearly expected suburban moms to be intimidated by his insurance industry credentials, not challenged with actual data. "We're implementing a dangerous breed ban effective immediately," he announced, clearly desperate to end the debate. "Residents with prohibited breeds have 30 days to remove the animals or face escalating fines and potential foreclosure proceedings." The vote was rushed through before anyone could process what was happening. 3 board members voting yes, with 2 abstentions from members who looked deeply uncomfortable with the whole proceeding. But as I walked out into the cool evening air, breathing in the scent of honeysuckle and fresh-cut grass, I wasn't worried. I had the entire meeting recorded on my phone, and my legal research had revealed something delicious. Their proposed breed ban violated multiple state laws, contradicted their own bylaws, and most importantly, would void their insurance coverage under current policy terms. Gerald Hammond had just declared war on the one person who could destroy his entire HOA operation with a single phone call. He just didn't know it yet. Gerald's breed ban implementation moved forward with the efficiency of someone who'd clearly been planning this for months. Within a week, official notices appeared on doors of every household with large breed dogs. The Johnsons' German Shepherd, the Martinez family's pit bull mix, and 3 other families with various breeds that Gerald had decided were dangerous based on his expert internet research. The notices demanded proof of breed, veterinary records, and compliance plans within 14 days. The tone was threatening, promising legal action and property liens for noncompliance. I recognized the intimidation tactics from bad faith insurance cases I'd reviewed, where companies used legal threats to bully policyholders into surrender. But Gerald made a critical error in his crusade. He started contacting insurance companies directly, claiming that Riverside Heights needed breed-specific liability coverage due to dangerous dog populations. His calls eventually reached my company, Pinnacle Property Insurance, which happened to underwrite the HOA's master liability policy. My assistant Jennifer forwarded me the inquiry with a confused note. "Chris, some HOA president is demanding we confirm that we won't cover communities with Rottweilers. Isn't this the community where you live? Want me to handle this?" I smiled at my computer screen. "No, Jennifer. Transfer any future calls from Gerald Hammond directly to me." And pull our complete policy file for Riverside Heights HOA. I want every document, every clause, and every renewal term we've ever issued them. The policy review revealed exactly what I'd suspected. Our master liability coverage for the HOA contained no breed-specific exclusions. In fact, our underwriting guidelines specifically prohibited breed discrimination, focusing instead on documented behavior and owner responsibility. Gerald's entire premise was fantasy. More interesting, the policy contained a material misrepresentation clause. If the HOA implemented policies that increased liability exposure or violated fair housing principles, we could cancel coverage immediately. A breed ban that forced responsible pet owners to surrender family members would absolutely qualify. I spent the weekend building my case like I was preparing for a board presentation. Policy documents, state fair housing laws, veterinary behavior research, and precedent cases where HOA breed bans had been struck down. David helped organize everything into presentation folders, while Mia created a photo timeline of Zeus's gentle interactions with neighborhood children. Monday morning, Gerald called my office demanding to speak with someone about insurance coverage for dangerous breed situations. Jennifer transferred him directly to me with barely concealed amusement. "This is Chris Reynolds, how can I help you?" I answered in my professional CEO voice. "Yes, this is Gerald Hammond, president of Riverside Heights HOA," he said with obvious self-importance. "I need confirmation that your company supports our decision to ban dangerous dog breeds from our community for liability protection." I let the silence stretch for a moment. "Mr. Hammond, I'm very familiar with your community. In fact, I live there. And I'm the CEO of Pinnacle Property Insurance." The sound of his brain short-circuiting was almost audible through the phone. "What? I'm Chris Reynolds, CEO of the company that underwrites your HOA's liability coverage," I repeated slowly. "And I'm also the owner of Zeus, the Rottweiler you've been trying to ban, so let's have a very frank conversation about insurance liability and what's about to happen to your coverage." The stammering that followed was deeply satisfying. I could practically hear him frantically Googling my name, finding my corporate bio, and realizing he'd been trying to intimidate someone who controlled his community's insurance future. "Our policy contains no breed-specific exclusions," I continued calmly. "In fact, our underwriting guidelines prohibit breed discrimination because actuarial data shows it's not a valid risk predictor. Your ban isn't protecting the community. It's creating legal liability that could void your coverage entirely." "But insurance companies always exclude dangerous breeds," he managed weakly. "Some do," I acknowledged. "We don't because we actually understand risk assessment. We evaluate individual animal behavior, owner responsibility, and documented incidents. My dog Zeus has 0 complaints, passed animal control evaluation, and by every objective measure represents less risk than many smaller breeds with actual bite histories." I let that sink in before delivering the knockout punch. "Here's what's going to happen, Gerald. You're going to withdraw this breed ban immediately. You're going to issue formal apologies to every family you've targeted. And you're going to implement evidence-based pet policies that focus on behavior rather than prejudice. And if I don't," his voice carried desperate bravado, "then I'll cancel your HOA's liability coverage for material misrepresentation and discriminatory practices," I said pleasantly. "You'll have 30 days to find replacement coverage, which will be nearly impossible once other carriers learn why you were dropped. Your community will be uninsurable, property values will collapse, and every homeowner will know exactly who caused it." The silence on the other end was beautiful. "You can't do that," he finally whispered. "I absolutely can, and I will if you force my hand. I've already drafted the cancellation notice. It's sitting on my desk waiting for my signature. Your choice, Gerald, withdraw the ban or explain to 847 homeowners why their property just became unsellable." The emergency board meeting happened within 48 hours. Gerald called it under the pretense of reviewing insurance considerations, but everyone knew what was really happening. Word had spread through the neighborhood faster than gossip at a high school reunion. The HOA president had tried to bully the CEO of their insurance company, and karma was serving justice with a side of humiliation. I arrived early with Michelle and Mia, who insisted on bringing Zeus to demonstrate exactly what Gerald had been so terrified of. My gentle giant immediately became the center of attention, accepting pets from curious neighbors, while Mia explained his training and temperament to anyone who'd listen. The community center was packed beyond capacity. Apparently, nothing brings out homeowner participation like the threat of losing insurance coverage and watching property values crater. Gerald sat at the head table looking like he'd aged a decade in 2 days, his earlier confidence replaced by the desperate expression of someone watching their authority evaporate. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began weakly, "we've received new information regarding our insurance coverage and breed policies that requires board reconsideration." I stood up before he could spin this into anything resembling dignity. "Let me clarify what's actually happening here. I'm Chris Reynolds, CEO of Pinnacle Property Insurance, which underwrites this HOA's master liability policy. Mr. Hammond contacted my company demanding confirmation that breed bans were necessary for coverage. The room was silent except for Zeus's tail thumping against the floor as a child scratched his ears. He was wrong. Our policy contains no breed exclusions because actuarial science shows breed is a poor risk predictor. What matters is documented behavior, owner responsibility, and evidence-based evaluation. I pulled out my presentation folder, distributing copies to board members. I've provided comprehensive research on dog bite statistics, insurance underwriting practices, and legal precedents. Communities that implement breed bans face discrimination lawsuits, fair housing violations, and increased insurance costs because they're making decisions based on prejudice rather than evidence. Martha Simmons raised her hand tentatively. But aren't some breeds more dangerous than others? Common misconception, I replied, clicking to my next slide showing veterinary behavior studies. The American Veterinary Medical Association found that factors like socialization, training, spay-neuter status, and owner supervision are far better predictors of aggression than breed. A poorly socialized Chihuahua can be more dangerous than a well-trained Rottweiler. Frank Delgado, who'd been Gerald's loyal supporter, suddenly found his spine. So this whole breed ban was based on incorrect assumptions about insurance requirements. Exactly, I confirmed. And implementing it would have violated fair housing principles, exposed the HOA to discrimination lawsuits, and potentially voided our liability coverage for material misrepresentation. Mr. Hammond's crusade wasn't protecting anyone. It was creating massive legal and financial liability. Gerald tried one last desperate defense. I was acting in good faith based on industry standards. You were acting on prejudice and using false insurance claims to justify it, I corrected firmly. As someone who spent years as an insurance adjuster, you should have known better. Instead, you weaponized fear and misinformation to target families with pets you personally disliked. The vote to rescind the breed ban was unanimous. Even Gerald voted yes, recognizing that his alternative was complete humiliation and possible personal liability. But I wasn't finished yet. I moved that we implement comprehensive evidence-based pet policies, I announced. Policies that focus on actual behavior, require basic training, and hold owners accountable for their animals' actions regardless of breed. Policies based on science rather than prejudice. The motion passed easily. The new policies required basic obedience training for all dogs, prohibited animals with documented aggression regardless of breed, and established clear procedures for addressing actual behavioral issues. Exactly what should have existed all along. As the meeting concluded, families with targeted dogs surrounded me with gratitude. The Johnsons' German Shepherd, the Martinez Pit Bull, and several other gentle giants who'd been condemned by Gerald's ignorance were safe. Mia beamed with pride as Zeus demonstrated perfect obedience commands for impressed neighbors who'd believed the dangerous breed propaganda. Gerald approached me as people filed out, looking utterly defeated. I didn't know who you were, he said quietly. I was just trying to protect the community. No, you were trying to exercise power over people you considered beneath you, I replied without sympathy. You used your insurance background to intimidate people who didn't know better. You just picked the wrong target. The aftermath moved swiftly. Gerald resigned as HOA president within a week, citing personal reasons but fooling absolutely nobody. Martha Simmons took over as interim president and immediately began implementing the evidence-based policies we'd outlined. The transformation was remarkable. Our new pet policies became a model for surrounding communities. We established a community dog park on underutilized HOA land, created training workshops, and built a culture where responsible pet ownership was celebrated rather than feared. Property values actually increased as families specifically sought out our pet-friendly, science-based community. Zeus became the neighborhood mascot, regularly visiting schools for Mia's presentations on responsible pet ownership and breed prejudice. The gentle giant who'd been condemned as dangerous spent his retirement years teaching children that fear and ignorance are far more dangerous than any dog breed. I established a pet owner advocacy program through my company, providing free legal resources and insurance education to families facing breed discrimination. The program has helped hundreds of families fight unjust HOA policies, using evidence-based research to counter fear-mongering. 6 months later, I received a letter from Gerald. A genuine apology acknowledging that his crusade had been driven by personal prejudice rather than legitimate safety concerns. He'd adopted a senior pit bull from the same shelter where we'd found Zeus, and the experience had completely changed his perspective on breed stereotypes. I framed that letter and hung it in my home office, a reminder that even the most stubborn prejudices can be overcome with education, evidence, and sometimes a well-timed revelation about who you're actually messing with. These days, Riverside Heights is known as the most pet-friendly community in the county. Our evidence-based policies have resulted in 0 dog bite incidents while supporting responsible ownership of all breeds. Zeus and his canine friends patrol the neighborhood like furry ambassadors of tolerance and common sense. Remember this, breed bans are lazy policy-making that ignores science and enables prejudice. Responsible pet ownership, proper training, and evidence-based evaluation protect communities far better than discrimination ever could. And if someone tries to weaponize insurance requirements against you, make sure they actually understand insurance before they start making threats. Just last week, I got a call from another community facing similar breed ban proposals. Time to educate another HOA board about the difference between actual risk management and prejudice disguised as policy. Zeus is ready for another road trip to demonstrate that prejudice is a behavior that needs to change in all situations.